Welcome to another Clever Dev video. Today we are going to look at setting MUI text color, and I mean that in a global sense. We're going to look at how to do that. So you can see this container here. That's actually got global styling on it, but we've also got a typography component over here and a button over here, and they're actually pulling from the theme. So better to use a more precise way of setting text color if possible, but I want to make sure that people are equipped both to set the text color for, in some cases, all the times that they're showing text, like maybe they only use typography to show text, or the button, which pulls from the theme. Maybe they're only showing text in typography and button. Both of those can get text from the theme, can get a custom text color from the theme, but sometimes in some situations you may want to have a global default theme, a global default color, and so that's what I've got set also on this container. So we'll dive into the code for all of these solutions. Here we are in our code. You can see that I've got this color typography TSX file, and I've got the typography, the button, and the container inside of here. And right now we have no theme styling. I've got a theme provider, and so there's a theme pass, but there's really nothing set on it. So we're really just at the default theme right now. I've got my app CSS file. There's nothing set in it so far that gives us any particular special styling or anything like that. So you can see that we have our typical black text color throughout the app, and the button is kind of an exception to that. But let's look at this typography component first. So if we go to computed, we go down here, the text color is just the color property, so you can see that nothing is set. The button does use it gets a color value. It's just getting primary main. That's just how buttons work in MUI by default. So I have the outlined variant set on it. And so that's why it's pulling that color. A couple of the button variants just pull the primary main theme value as their text color, and in this case, the border color too. Then I've got my MUI container over here. Nothing too special about it. And we didn't see it in my JSX code, but we do have a stack wrapping these. So that is in my app.js. So we can see that here. Anyway, so in my actual JSX for my components, you can see that there's nothing special on any of them. There's nothing about the text color, and yet we're going to customize the text color for all three of these. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to update the theme so that all of our typography components get a text color. So if you're looking for how to set text in a Material UI app, well, your typography component is a very common component for displaying text. And so it makes sense that if you want like a default text color, then maybe you'll be satisfied just having your typography component be updated in the theme, be customized in the theme. So what we're going to do is we're going to say components, and then inside of that, we are going to say MUI typography. Then inside of that, we are going to say style overrides. And then inside of that, we actually get somewhere. So what we're going to do inside of here is we are going to target the root of the MUI typography. So what that's doing is it's actually saying a typography component that has a dash root class on it. We can do the same thing with the button. It's got a dash root class. As far as I know, every single component in MUI does. I've spent a ton of time in it, and I cannot think of a single one that doesn't have dash root at its most root element in the DOM. So anyway, this is just like I forget what they call it, the CSS system, maybe is what they call it in MUI, where you can actually, in some situations like this in the theme, you can actually target those classes through a system like this. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to say color orange. And I don't actually need that semicolon there. Now, just no changes to our typography component, just this theme change, and then suddenly all of our typography components will be getting this new orange text color. Like I said, pretty handy way to set a default text color in your app, but obviously it doesn't apply to all components. So what we would want to do for that button is we would want to, we could do the same system where instead of MUI typography, then I say MUI button as my next one. However, I want to show you a different way. That would be totally valid. However, another way that's a broader net, if you want it, is that we can actually target the palette and set a different primary main value. And the nesting inside of our theme does get pretty deep. But anyway, what we're going to do on this one is I will set a hash value of 964B00. So this is a brown color. This is in fact the hash for brown. So we can see that now our button has picked up that change because it's just using primary main. Obviously, if you do that, there's some side effects. Any component using primary, the primary color, the primary main color in the palette is going to pick up that change, and a lot of components might be using it for like their background color or their border or something like that. So you would have to be careful if you use this approach, but partly I just want to highlight that it is an option and a possibility. So now between these two things, like let's say that I set both of these to this brown color, then we'll see that we're getting basically like a default color throughout our app, or a default text color. So the more precise, the better, is a general rule in software development. And so that's why I have reserved this last method, well, for last, and it actually takes us outside of MUI world. So let me collapse our components over here in our source. So this was created with create React app. So my components are all in MUI world. However, this app CSS, app JS, etc., they can use MUI components, as we can see here, but this is just React world over here. So anyway, I've got this app CSS. What I can do is I can use typical styling in here, and you can see I've got some leftover garbage that I should have deleted from my create React app. Before we jump into how to make an even more global MUI text color, then I want to mention that all the code for this video is available on my site. There is a link to it in the video details. So if you want to copy paste any of this, or just be able to digest the code a little more slowly, then you can click on that link and go to my site and be able to take a look at all the code. Also, there is an active coupon in the video details to my MUI course on Udemy. So my coupon, I try very hard to keep them always fresh, so that you can get a discount on that course if you have found my channel. And I think that you're going to get great value out of that course. So definitely check that out. It dives super deep into MUI components, how to style them, how to use some of the most complex ones, how to use the theme, the SX prop, the styled API, all the most difficult things around styling components really dives deep into. But anyway, we can use typical CSS selectors over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple things. First, we've got this body color green. And if set aside React or MUI, just in general with HTML apps, then if you're wanting to set a global default color, then you might use this approach. You might say body color green. So that's a little bit heavy-handed. We can make it a little bit more precise than that. I showed you that all these components have some kind of class with -root in the name, so we can make use of that. So let's create a selector that does make use of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say class equals, class star equals, and then I'll say -root in here. And with that, we're going to have a selector that is going to do a pretty good job of only targeting MUI components. And I actually don't need that semicolon there. So now we're going to be only targeting MUI components. You can see this is a little bit heavy-handed, though, in that it actually is too powerful of a selector. It's too specific, I guess, in that it overrode the theme values that we had set for these first two components. So while you could do this, this would definitely work for a global class selector. And I put this -root modifier on here instead of using body because maybe we mix in some other component library along with MUI, and it has a different system for applying classes, and it doesn't use that -root. If you wanted, then this would be a method to only target your MUI components. But let's do one more selector in here that is just a little bit more specific. I am actually going to put a div element selector in front of that. And now we can see that only this container was selected. So our typography uses a p tag or a p element. Our button, of course, uses a button element, and our container uses a div. So this is kind of a way to set a global selector, a global text color. However, it is only going to be, you just have some options for limiting how global it is. So anyway, some really good options for setting, you could almost say like a default MUI text color, or just setting text color in a big swath of your MUI components without really impacting, without setting some accidental CSS styling.